Hello and welcome back. Well, we're going to try and just go through some of the people, and this is recorded on Saturday, who have either resigned or retired. And I did start with the one that came out at 26, but let's do it. Should we do it in a rough order? You've got your lovely graphic on, Jeff, I must admit. Shows you sort of the sort of events and who's done what. So should we start with, I think the minister was the first, was he? Oh, no, it was actually Chief Secretary's first, yeah.
So that was Monday this week. No, Monday last week.
Yeah.
That was Monday last week. At 5 o'clock, that was suddenly announced. Chief Secretary's gone. He's retired.
But not only retired, sorry, because it's my favourite bit. Retirement normally means you hand over a job and you have a 3-month maybe period. He left that night. He'd gone by 5. I mean, it was all done and dusted, wasn't it? Sorry.
Yeah, he retired immediately. Early retirement, given his age. But, you know, it's all right, isn't it? In the job. So who went next?
Well, hang on. Let's just talk about him because we've got plenty of time. I want to drill this one down a bit.
The problem we have is nobody knows who Will Greenough is.
Well, why don't they know who he is?
Nobody knows or really cares who the Chief Secretary is, which
mostly
is quite astounding.
The top man in the civil service, right? Everything goes to him. If you had a pyramid, he is the top, right? Because I mean, I've never interviewed him. I've seen him in the hallways a few times. Probably he wouldn't even know anything about it. You must have had dealings with. Anything you want to say on this? I mean, what sort of guy was he? Was he a hands-on guy? Did he know what was going on? Do you think? And, without us getting into any hot water here.
What I have to say won't get anybody in hot water. What I would say is that when engaging with Will, he would listen very carefully and do very little. However, at the time that I wanted to see significant change, in all fairness to Will, at that time, the Council of Ministers were too comfortable in this super role of having control over each department, and they resisted the necessary level of change. So the fault lies both with the Chief Secretary and the ministers as well. And it was the interaction between the two. But ultimately, Will's position became untenable.
Yet he resigned. There's no anything else. He's out of the system. Presumably, does that mean, and I don't know the answer to this one, if it's a legal thing, but can he be held responsible for anything that might come up in the future?
Well,
again, without saying things we can't say.
Without wanting to return what I said in the previous section too much, the point is that each one of these individuals who've gone, resigned, retired, they've all been praised to the hilt. Now, come on, people. They've gone, and they've gone for a reason.
To be fair, Alf Cannon and Timwell on the Tuesday after, he said, I acknowledge his long service. Yeah. Which was sort of like, it's like if you go to school and you don't really get any prizes, but you get attainment in registration or something.
What, for turning up?
Yeah. It wasn't the most ringing endorsement.
What if he gets a party? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Leaving do and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, okay, he literally went at 5 o'clock. And the stories I was hearing, it was sort of fait accompli. I don't know, what you've heard,
I basically heard it was very quick.
I don't know.
No.
It was quick, though, yeah.
Well, so there we go. The top man, he falls sort of on his sword, but not exactly.
If we're staying with the top job for a second, I have to say that I think Caldrick Randall said and did the right thing on that little video he did the other day, speaking to the public service, trying to sort of rally morale a little bit, because it must be absolutely benzash non-returnable at the moment.
Okay. Then it was Minister, right? You got in your events.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's kind of hard.
I should know that. I've lost track of them.
Well, he hadn't gone on the Tuesday and wasn't
talking
going.
about now,
David, because he wasn't going.
It was such a weird position because obviously the papers were told, the radio was told, I'm not resigning. But on the same day, he has said that he's offered Alpha's resignation. Now it's gone, give me a few days, think about it and all that. And I get that with Treasury Minister in a sense. It is probably the second most important ministerial position. But equally, why tell people that you're not going to go if you've offered your resignation?
Well, exactly. And also the groundswell of backchat and social media was gaining ground, and he kind of alluded to that, didn't he? When he did go, he said it was all this. I was becoming the story almost, sort of thing.
To be honest, I'm, and I quite like David actually. I got quite love him. I just think there's kind of like a bit of a weird lack of self-awareness about public opinion on this one. It does just come across as I've done nothing wrong, and they're going, sorry, the tribunal said you did.
And that's why I asked him in the interview the first thing. I said, you didn't say sorry. Not one sorry in there, was it?
Even if all the tribunal said, and to be fair, tribunal said it was at times probably misled by Catherine Megson. You did do something then as a minister. You were receiving poor advice. You didn't even think about it.
I'm somewhat reticent to post the event, criticise unduly the people who've resigned and retired and walked away, and for obvious reasons of courtesy, they've gone, they've paid the price. But and I would have been quite happy just to leave David alone for the time being, for him to consider what went wrong and why. But he can't help himself. He came out and said, well, he said, I've done nothing wrong, and ultimately he inferred that I will have a case to show in public. Now, we all remember, don't we?
The point-by-point rebuttal.
The point-by-point,
which never
happened. And of course, he could reasonably not come out until after the second hearing of the tribunal on the issue of a cacophony of peculiar documents is closed. But look at the position. So because he's spoken now, I feel it's right that I address the matter further. Okay. Now, what I want to do, if I may, Paul, is read a letter that he wrote to the Public Accounts Committee. Now what was
this? The one you were on at the time, right?
Yeah, the one that raised the whole issue of what on earth the hell is going on with Rosalind Ranson. And this letter was addressed to the Public Accounts Committee on the 28th of July of last year.
Okay, this is in the public domain, is it?
So yes.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
Okay.
But if it isn't, it is now.
Okay.
Right. So I believe it is. But so that our report was out, pointing out, as the PAC, having investigated it, a whole range of things which have now come into further clarity as a consequence of the tribunal. This is the letter that the minister wrote to, effectively, the chairman, Mr. Speaker, who was the chair of the PAC. And I'll read it because it's important. The DHSC is concerned that much of the information presented, this is by Rosalind Ranson to the PAC, is inaccurate, has no evidence base, is unfounded and or is unprofessional in terms of respecting colleagues and command and decision-making structures. Many of the comments in the transcript are also personal and derogatory and are not in line with the values of the department. We would like to reiterate to the committee that the department has begun a significant workforce and culture programme in the last 12 months, now handed over to Manx Care. This programme focuses on the values of the organisation: commitment, appreciative action, respectfulness and excellence. CARE, the initials for that, represent what the department is about, what the department stands for and what the department values. It is our expectation, and particularly those of the executive team, that the values and behaviours are integral in the way in which we work. The department is hugely disappointed with Dr. Ranson's unfounded and unevidenced criticism of her current and also relatively new colleagues, feedback of which and guidance around working with others has been discussed on a number of occasions. Now, David's put himself in a position where he needs to be challenged. The point is, he knew what was coming out of the PAC report. To what degree did he, as the minister, engage personally with Rosalind Ranson to find out whether or not that letter had any accuracy at all? We now know that it was absolute nonsense. David, therefore, conclusion, David just became a mouthpiece for his executive leadership. That is not the role of a minister.
Well, if you look at the tribunal judgment again, there's a reference to this hearing where after she'd given evidence, where it was said that I can't remember. I won't say whose name it was because honestly I can't remember. It's in there, so it'd be one of a few people, but somebody had reported Dr. Ranson to the medical council over her evidence to PAC.
That was I understand that was the director of public health.
I think it could be. I can't off the top of my head remember. And then that guy came back and went, a doctor's perfectly entitled to state an opinion to a parliament. Like, it was after an opinion. So you're there going, so not only are they doing everything that we're doing to her here, they then went, go a step further, let's complain to the professional body, saying she's being unprofessional now.
Incredible.
And it's just like, it's just this thing that there was no awareness from the government that they've done anything wrong. And it's just kind of astounding.
Well, I think it's denial. And here we come back to the role of ministers. I've criticised David, and I'm only criticising him now because he's inappropriately come out and put this sop out into the public when he should have remained quiet and considered everything that had happened. But he can't stop himself. And then you've got, before we move on to the others, we've got, if I may, we've got Laurie Hooper's position as the current minister. Now, extraordinarily, in very recent days, in reference to the resigned or retired chief executive of DHSC, fulsome praise that somehow A, she was the right person, and B, she was working on improving the culture. But actually, we know from the tribunal that she, apart from anything else, was spying on Rosalind Ranson. I mean,
that was just
a complete and utter lack of integrity of the leadership.
They made her the full-time position during the actual tribunal, which we all were scratching our head on that one.
Utterly dumbfounded by that.
Why would you do that until it's not over? You know,
absolutely.
Why
in other words, they're in denial. They're just not used to being challenged, and they are fully used to getting away, well, frankly, with blue murder. And on this occasion, they haven't.
Okay, and I don't want to get to Laurie Hooper because you put him in the frame to go as well, but that's down the line.
Well, I don't think he understands his job. He doesn't understand his role, and he's in denial. I think it's just
his evidence to the tribunal was weird. Like the evidence session with him was bizarre.
He sees nothing wrong.
The transcription is so weird because he has this sort of weird thing where he goes, "I didn't know anything about this." And
he did.
And so I go, "You're on PAC." And they said, "PAC put this opinion forward." He said, "Well, that was the opinion of the committee." And I'm saying, "You were on the committee." And don't get me wrong, right? From a point, yeah, fair enough. He has to defend his department. He is now he is in charge of the department now. There's an element on you have to defend your troops, basically. You have to stand there and say, "I'm staying by them." But at the same time, how can you just? It's kind of bewildering.
Yes, it is.
And it's just
Well, he's in your sights, and I've mentioned it a few times. And honestly, he thinks there's nothing to answer to. So
he comes over
as maybe it'll change. People
comes over as arrogant.
Don't get one day people say nothing's going to happen. Next day,
he'll be back for the tribunal anyway.
Yes,
because the hearing on these documents, he was minister, so
he's now going to face the music on that one.
Well,
even though he wasn't in the chair at the time, or most of it. So
he was when these documents, for this metadata document, and all that. That's the problem.
We can't talk about too much. Right, next on your list, anyway.
No, we can talk about the subject matter. What we can't do is express opinion on it.
Yeah.
So we had Mrs. Malone, who
shouldn't
retired, who of course she was.
Who are we talking about?
Mrs. Malone, who resigned, who was of course. That was again a bizarre moment when sat in the tribunal, and you're just there going, "So you're effectively spying at Government House on the."
Such a powerful word, that isn't it? Spying. It really stuck in my head like that one.
And it was just one of them where you goes, "Well, I don't know, spying is the right word," and you sat there going, "These text messages that were read out, which were just astounding."
She was reporting back, wasn't she?
Where texting Catherine Maxson saying, "Oh, she's managed to get invited herself to Government House." And then the tribunal was like, "No, we've had confirmation from Sir Richard Gosney. Yeah. He invited her." So the Lieutenant Governor invites the medical director.
The mindset to try and keep her away and the organisational effort to do that is staggering, isn't it?
And they were spying because the thing was, didn't speak to Howard, it was chatting to Dr. Allenson. Yeah,
it's like,
she showed her unsuitability for the post she got halfway through the tribunal when all this was coming out, because she was ultimately sycophantic towards the then Maxson,
it seemed very strange to up someone to the full position until you knew the outcome. I mean, that just just was
shows you
jaw-dropping.
how removed they were. I mean, Sam's used the issue about, and I've inferred it, that Laurie was removed from the reality of this. Well, actually, so was the newly appointed and now gone chief executive of DHSC. I mean, it's you think that they thought that they could act in this way and get away with it.
And it was a quick succession because, I mean, Dan Davis, who was the acting head of Home Affairs, took was it 2 years or something before they upped him fully there. So things have moved in different ways. Just go on.
You had I don't know how to pronounce her name. I think it's Mrs. Coney. Connie.
Claire Coney.
Yes, Claire Coney. She's left.
Who was she?
She comes up she was head of HR.
Oh, the HR, yeah.
Director of HR. Comes up in the tribunal. There's a couple of things about her, but yeah, I think hers was probably circumstances and events around you. We're in a change in the culture. We've got to be seen to.
She acted improperly according to the tribunal judgment, insofar as she engaged with at one point with the Catherine Magson effectively to undermine Rosalind Ranson's position. That's wholly inappropriate.
Manx care transfer, wasn't it?
Wholly
Right,
inappropriate conduct from the executive director of HR. I think in the frame is the future of HR. Now, if government's going to be restructured, I think we have to think seriously about HR. Is it capable of being sensitive to the operational requirements in terms of HR roles, or should it be disbanded, made into an advisory body to teams that go out to the operational departments? Because right now it's just not working, and to have leadership of that poor quality is just unacceptable.
Did she resigned? Did she? She hasn't retired.
Resigned.
So resigned, but she left straight away. Did she as well?
I think so. Yeah.
I think it was no one. I think they've all gone straight away, haven't they? Even on a resignation. Next.
And then, of course, we had Dr. Hewitt.
Well, okay, so we have to repeat this because it is just fascinating. At 20 to 6 on a Friday, when everyone's off for the weekend,
just before TT week, when all the minds are elsewhere.
It's just not good enough, is it? This thing of dumping stuff for the weekends, I just don't get it personally. But I'm sure there's a great reason.
I was told on Wednesday night by a friend of mine in health that they've been told.
Oh, I got told days ago.
And
but
we just sat there going...
Yeah, but we get told that off the record. We're sitting there waiting for the actual deed to be done, and it's done on a Friday at 20 to 6.
And ultimately, I don't know. Yeah, it is what it is. The government, of course, doesn't do these things deliberately. But I don't know about that one. I mean, it backfired anyway, because it was our most read story of the week pretty much instantly.
Well, the days of having to wait for the next paper to come out, of course, it's different, isn't it? But, let's remind ourselves, this is the lady who was up front on almost every press conference and was always third in line. I mean, we asked a question, sorry to go on this, but it was remarkable. I say, whatever, and if it's a medical question, that Howard would have the first go at it. And then Ashley would have a go at it. And by the time we got to her, Hewitt, she said, I have nothing else to add. Now, I always assume, because she's a doctor, I never even thought about it, that she's not actually what we call a medical doctor, is she?
No, it didn't come out until effectively the PAC inquiry, where I said, when you invite Catherine Magson to define her background and competencies, we specifically said, what are they? And she said, I'm a director of I beg your pardon, a degree in music.
Yeah.
And that was it. Now, all the way through, well, let me just touch on this, all the way through the many Zoom sessions that members had with David and Catherine Magson when we were in lockdown, and questions were posed by members on Teams or Zoom, whatever it was. I think it was mainly Teams, ultimately. David was very quick to come out with this position, and then he would turn to Catherine on Zoom or Teams and say, isn't that right? And she would go, yes, Minister. And now we know, effectively, that the advice they were both giving to members of Tynwald was absent medical and clinical advice, which was shut out. I mean,
it is
breathtaking.
Astounding, that, actually. That is one of the more unbelievable sort of elements of this. And you have realistically, the only medical person at the top of government who's involved in these things was Dr. Allinson. He was the education minister.
Yeah.
And he at one point has this post-Coleman thing where he's gone to David Ash said, she wants to speak to you, Dr. Ranson wants to speak to you, and he's gone, no, it was command structures and all this. And then, so David Ash said, I don't remember this happening, but wouldn't challenge it in the tribunal. So from this, we can say it did happen because it's a minister giving evidence.
The difference between Rosalind and Henrietta and Catherine was that Henrietta and Catherine came into these posts simply following blindfold what was happening in the UK. And Rosalind all the way through was saying, no, this is an island. We're in a special set of circumstances. We should not simply blindfold follow what was happening in the UK. And she came, you say overqualified, she came to the island because she recognised there was an opportunity to do something really special and different compared to all the frustrations of this enormous body, NHS, in the UK. And history now shows how we treated her. Totally unacceptable.
Well, yeah, it does.
Okay. But let's finish this off one more time. There was this video being made by Dr. Ranson that was going to be shown to the public, and it got stopped. I have been on and banging the doors of this one because I know it exists. As I think it exists. I'm led to believe this video exists. Recorded. Well, again, I think it's still there, but we have tried. We have our little chit chats, don't we? We have both tried to get hold of this video, which is almost like the smoking gun, which had a graph which basically said you've got to get on with things ASAP or win. And she was all ready to give that to the press conference and was pulled at very short notice.
It's literally like 5 minutes before.
And it's never seen the light of day.
But even then, though, they start talking. There's a thing, even at that point, they start talking about she's tired. Huh? She's tired. There's a thing in that, in the judgment, it's there. And this is what I said earlier, where I still can't get to is, what the hell happened? Something happened.
It happened in the back room, didn't it? Just
worse,
minutes before they went on, something happened there.
Yeah, but worse than that, all the advice which she had put into a presentation to ensure that the politicians, the Council of Ministers, were properly informed, that was never allowed to go to the Council of Ministers. I mean, that was the medical and clinical advice, and it never got there.
Do you think Tynwald failed in this as well?
Well, I think the members in this case probably can be compared to the general public, who all tried to do their very best to do the right thing, and it was out with their experience, but it wasn't out with the experience, or shouldn't have been, of the DHSC or the Council of Ministers, because they had the advice that they should have had, and it never got through to them.
Because that's just the thing that I find interesting, is if you look back on it, there's times where yourself and Bill Shimmons were quite vocal on a lot of things at the time. But the one thing I've heard recently, and I'm going to give a little plug to the people on the hill over there, a couple of weeks ago, Ann Corlett was on with Phil Gorn and talking about what it was like with the department at the time. Really interesting interview to hear what that was like at the time. I recommend you go and listen to that, because it is just sort of like you realise that this wasn't just a breakdown there. It was breaking down inside the department and outside. And this is where these reforms that they're bringing in, we're going, right, these should change things. But this is where, like I said to you about, it's a case now where Tynwald and us in the media and everyone else can't let the government be able to just stand there and say, we've changed these things. These things have to be tested.
Absolutely. Lessons learned.
There is a lesson.
Way beyond that.
Yeah. There is a lesson learned here. There has been a lesson learned here. The lesson learned here is that if you have legitimate issues around whistleblowing or anything else that goes on and you're in a public service job, we have a system which will support you. We have a system which doesn't find favour of the government just because it's the government. We have a system which actually is working and has delivered this result, because without this we wouldn't have known half this
hang
stuff.
on a second, wait a minute. The point is, Rosalind got to the point of a sound judicial judgment because she had massive financial backup that a lot of people who have, a significant number of people who have found themselves in similar positions have been left completely on their own.
You've been married to a QC would help. Well, clearly it helps. I mean, you've got the fantastic
and the massive backup.
And then the British Medical Council. Right?
Yeah.
Well, that is an issue around the legal system as a whole anyway. So probably should be a look into whether legal aid should be extended into that. That's different.
Well, the Constitutional Legal and Justice Committee once set up recognised, I mean, I was on the committee, I asked him all to set it up, was that what became self-evident very quickly was a huge panoply of work to do in almost every area. And rightly, I think the committee ultimately now, the chair of that committee now, the Minister for DHA, Jane, has now picked this up by addressing one of the areas of concern, which is legal services. But the committee were very clearly concerned about the structure and remit of the AG's department, but there's only so much that can be done at a time, otherwise the whole thing becomes overloaded.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up here. I think, though, we must really think about Dr. Ranson at this point, because she may not have a future in the normal sort of path career that she thought she was going to have. And I think our thoughts must be with her, because for someone who could have just easily folded earlier, she's gone all the way, and for better or worse, that's going to be with her, isn't it? And I really hope one day she'll be here and talking to us in the media, don't you?
Can't be for now, can it?
No, it can't be for now, obviously.
But I followed this right from the get-go as soon as I became aware of it, which is a long time ago. And the impact upon Rosalind has been awful, and I honour her for the way she's conducted herself throughout this whole issue. You just can't imagine the pressure, because I'm guessing that there were probably temptations to fold and take some money and gagging, and who knows? Maybe we'll never know about that sort of thing. Rosalind has integrity and principle.
Integrity, that's a good word to use on this.
And she showed so many others up who hadn't.
And at this stage, how many people on your list? How many have gone now?
5.
5. With maybe some more, do you think?
I don't know, maybe. It's kind of one of these now where you'd argue that perhaps the changes that had to be made have been made. The big ones need to be made at the top. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, there will be other areas that need to change. Manx Care in one sense is muddying the waters around health because it's a new team running that. So, ministerial wise maybe, but I can't see any others. Okay. Give it 2 days, I'll be proven wrong.
Yeah,
there we go.
Next Friday at 20 to 6, we'll watch. Oh no, this is bank holidays. It could be.
No, Wednesday.
It could be Wednesday because they got a massive long bank holiday coming up.
Wednesday at 4:30, you can announce what you want.
We are so cynical. We're just terribly cynical.
We're just simply observers of fact. Yeah.
Anyway, Sam Turton, thanks very much indeed. Chris Robertshaw, it's been a special. I hope you've appreciated what we talked about. I hope so. It's been enlightening for me, and just navigating around what we can do at the minute. And obviously, there's so much more that will come out in the wash. And as I say, stay tuned for more exciting episodes.